There are some fighters who develop a certain set of skills they have acquired over a very long career, skills that make them a nightmare for other fighters. These signature moves and styles, perfected over years of intense practice, serve to both excite the audience and terrify opponents. But every once in a while, another kind of fighter will come along, a true martial artist who fights with not only his body, but his mind. He won't make the mistake of trying to avoid the signature moves and stylistic strengths of the other fighter. That's not ambitious enough. Instead, he'll try to exploit them, counter them, and use it against them. A prime and very high-level example of this was the last fight between Manny Pacquiao and his long-term rival, Juan Manuel Marquez. The two had met 3 times before, this being their 4th encounter. Every single one of the first 3 fights had become classics, with both fighters making a good account of themselves and displaying skill sets built on aggression mixed with intelligence. But at first, no one could have possibly predicted that the two would be so evenly matched. In their first fight, Pacquiao had knocked Marquez down 3 times in the first round. He had managed this by using one of the most unique elements of his style, his ability to create dominant angles using his insane agility and footwork. When Pacquiao fights, he sets up his powerful rear hand by stepping left, placing his lead foot on the inside of his opponent's. Some more informed viewers may be surprised by this, as much has been made about securing the outside foot position in an open stance to ease shots with your power hand. But from an inside position, Pacquiao's jab will beat an opponent's cross, and he can stay safe by using his lead shoulder and elbow to shield himself from attacks. More importantly, Pacquiao's insane athleticism allows him to land his rear hand from an inside foot position. He does this by pivoting off of his lead foot to an utterly ridiculous extent, like a martial artist throwing a roundhouse kick. In the first round of their first fight, Pacquiao conditioned Marquez to this technique until he was wired to defend against it, and then surprised him by stepping outside to the traditional southpaw angle, greatly shortening the distance needed to land his punch and increasing its power. And he did this 3 times, scoring 3 knockdowns in 1 round. After the first, it looked to everyone as if the fight was a foregone conclusion. But in the second round, Marquez completely changed his strategy. Instead of simply trying to move away, Marquez stood firm and escaped Pacquiao's attacks with precise head movement and well-placed parries. Now, only after he successfully defended the attack would he move, catching Pacquiao by following him as he tried to exit the exchange. For the remainder of the fight, when Pacquiao tried to fade inside to exit off angle, Marquez followed him by stepping forward, at times shifting into southpaw to double up on his rights. Other times, he would stay with him as he pivoted, then attack once Pacquiao had set. Marquez fought his way back from a major point deficit, earning himself a draw. The next 2 matches would be no less thrilling. Both fighters showed new techniques, strategies, and improvements. However, the bouts always hinged around the same basic premise: Pacquiao's ability to create superior angles from which to attack and retreat, and Marquez's ability to punish him for it with powerful counters. But after Pacquiao won both rematches on points, it was clear that Marquez needed a new strategy, one that would not leave his chances of victory in the hands of the judges. In their 4th fight, Marquez came up with a fundamentally different strategy. Rather than try to counter Pacquiao by defending his punches and then returning a few of his own, Marquez now hoped to intercept Pacquiao's aggressive attacks directly. To do this, he would have to walk right into the line of fire. After taking a lot of punishment, Marquez struck gold. By the time what would be the last round of the fight began, both fighters had already knocked the other down. However, it was now Pacquiao who was dominating and looked ready to put Marquez away. Pacquiao double-stepped to the outside, looking to set up his rear hand. But, showing absolutely perfect timing, Marquez sidestepped directly into Pacquiao's path, stealing away his superior outside angle and slipping his punch. At the same time, Marquez rolled hard to his left and managed to just get his head outside of Pacquiao's jab, succeeding by such a narrow margin that Pacquiao's punch glided along his face as he moved in deeper. Marquez then connected with one of the most beautiful shots ever captured on film, and Pacquiao had just leaped right into it. Making matters even worse for him, Marquez's foot had blocked his step, and he now had no footing, meaning that all of his weight was falling forward with no base to catch him. After 4 epic fights, Marquez finally had the victory he had waited so many years for. While many called the shot dumb luck, there have been videos going around the internet of Marquez training this exact shot almost since the fight ended. But if you need more proof, Marquez landed a few similar shots effectively in the early rounds of his and Pacquiao's very first fight. And it had shaken Pacquiao, causing him to retreat. But, oddly enough, for whatever reason, Marquez had seemed to mostly abandon that strategy afterwards, until 3 fights later. Perhaps the takeaway is that it is unwise to give an intelligent fighter 4 chances to figure you out, especially when many of your previous fights were so close. The next example is the phenomenal fight between MMA legends Mirko Cro Cop and Fedor Emelianenko. Cro Cop had just finished slaughtering his way through the entirety of the heavyweight division with terrifying high kicks and bone-breaking crosses. Among these victims was Fedor's own brother. Fedor was intelligent, brutally strong, and very well-rounded, but even he had to be worried about Cro Cop's fight-ending roundhouse kicks. Cro Cop kicked so fast that the human eye often failed to pick up the moment of impact, and it looked to spectators as if Cro Cop had simply kicked over his opponent's head. It's not until slowing down the film that you can make out the true extent of damage done. His body kick was equally terrifying, leaving welts and bruises on his opponent's ribs in the shape of the bones of his feet. This is something that would make many of us roll our eyes if we saw it portrayed in an action film or anime, but Cro Cop just kicked that hard. A big factor in Cro Cop's one-kick KO ability was the way he delayed the extension of his leg until the very last moment, well past the time most fighters performed the action. When opponents tried one of the go-to standards for defending a roundhouse kick, the cover block and parry, they found themselves parrying past Cro Cop's knee, where they thought his shin should already be. Cro Cop would then expertly angle his kick in just the right way to get around his opponent's second line of defense, either going just over their cover block to catch the dome of their head, or just underneath to land a liver shot. As Cro Cop himself put it, right leg hospital, left leg cemetery. Fedor had his work cut out for him, but as it turned out, he was up to the task. Although Fedor would have mixed success defending against Cro Cop's bone-shattering crosses, he was able to neutralize his thunderous roundhouse kicks right away. Fedor did this by layering every single defensive technique possible together on top of each other. Fedor employed a duck, cover block, cross parry, and leg check all at once, covering every single opening on his right side. Fedor didn't knee block every time, and he did take some hard body shots because of it. But it was Fedor's duck, in tandem with his own take on the cover guard, that seemed to give Cro Cop the most trouble. Fedor intentionally high blocks with his elbow far away from his body. This does open him up to body blows, but also creates a slant to deflect kicks over his head. Fedor even managed to hook Cro Cop's leg and throw him into the ropes. After successfully defending several of Cro Cop's most terrifying shots, Fedor felt comfortable enough to turn Cro Cop's own kicks against him. And he did this with a beautiful display of skill and timing. Reading Cro Cop's preparatory motion, Fedor intercepted his southpaw rear leg roundhouse to the head with an orthodox rear leg roundhouse to the leg. Those who have taken a hard kick to the leg without pads know just how painful it can be. And Cro Cop got the full force of Fedor's kick on his support leg while mid-kick. But worse yet for Cro Cop, he had been up on his toes, pivoting into his kick. Watch his ankle as Fedor's kick lands. Fedor had not only neutralized the most feared weapon in MMA at the time, he had found a way to use it against its wielder. Already tired and battered, Cro Cop did not attempt his signature move for the remainder of the fight, and Fedor took a well-earned decision. Next up is a quick honorable mention. Although it didn't affect the course of the fight, Maidana did manage to counter Floyd Mayweather's signature pull counter. Maidana intercepted Floyd's overhand counter with a tight straight punch, moving his head safely offline as he did so. That's a rare display of timing and creativity against an all-time great. Our last example is Prince Naseem Hamed versus Marco Antonio Barrera. Hamed's agile footwork, bizarre head movement, and crazy theatrics before, during, and after his fights are legendary. Despite ignoring nearly every piece of advice given to boxers the first day they walk into a gym, the Prince succeeded in consistently humiliating skilled opponents. Hamed was able to do this because he was an absolute master at the draw and counter, presenting open targets to his competitors on purpose so that he could trick them into throwing the exact punch he wanted them to. The Prince baited his opponents into overreaching by staying just out of range, and then punished them for it. He maintained his distance with long-range flicker jabs and tricky footwork. He confused and confounded his opponents by escaping from dire situations by using what looked like supernatural head movement. But Barrera did not fall for a single one of Hamed's traps. Even though Barrera came in as a 3-1 underdog, as it turned out, he would have an orthodox answer to every one of the Prince's unorthodox techniques. While Hamed tried to draw long, off-balance attacks from his competitors, Barrera kept his striking tight, always beating Hamed to the punch by keeping his shorter. Rather than overreach, he worked his way in with balanced steps and feints. When Hamed leaped in to try his one-shot power blows, Barrera countered with tight body hooks. When Hamed tried to smother and rest his weight on him, Barrera discouraged the attempt with lightning-fast hook combinations. When Hamed tried to use his stellar head movement to safely exit an exchange, Barrera stayed upright and balanced, calmly tracking the Prince's head movement. And when Hamed tried to use fancy footwork to escape, Barrera cut him off with body shots, occasionally turning his hooks into holds to trap Hamed in place. He would either grab the Prince around the waist, or use a collar tie to pull Hamed into a punch. At times, Barrera feinted with one hand to lead Hamed into another. All of this meant that Hamed, a natural-born counterpuncher, was forced to lead, and that was not his strong suit in the least. By the end of the fight, Barrera was landing far more counters than the flashy counterpuncher. Barrera completely dominated the fight, and the Prince soon retired. The takeaway should be that there's always a way to counter another fighter, no matter how indestructible they may seem at the time. Frazier's weaving crouch and long-range gazelle hook were the perfect tools to combat Ali's lightning-fast jabs and self-titled lean back style. But Foreman's guard manipulations and wide hooks and uppercuts were kryptonite to Frazier's low crouch and shuffle hooks. But don't think that your current toolkit is what you're stuck with. Ali defeated Foreman and Frazier in both of their rematches by altering his style and thinking about how best to deal with each of his opponents as individuals. In the end, intelligence will always be the most dangerous weapon in a fighter's arsenal. And if this kind of high-level strategy being utilized during dangerous situations is something that intrigues you, then I recommend you check out our new graphic novel, Mortal Weapons, written by myself and illustrated by the great Iman Rashid. It comes in at a hefty 100 pages with an 8x11 page size, and is full of real-life strategies and techniques. And best of all, if you pre-order right now, you can purchase Mortal Weapons for only $6.99. The links are in the description and the comments below. Let me know if I missed any examples in this video. It's possible that we'll be making a part 2. From the Modern Martial Artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.